Welcome dear students. In this lesson I am discussing another Sri Lankan poem which is prescribed for you advanced level English syllabus, that is Vivimarie Vanderpoorten Explosion. Madam Vivimarie Vanderpoorten is a lecturer of English in Open University Sri Lanka. Right? Her ancestry is Belgian and Sri Lankan, at present living in Kurunegala. She won a Gracian Prize for Literature in 2007 and Sark Poetry Award in Delhi 2009. Right. Her life story is not relevant to our studies. Let's discuss what she tells in the poem Explosion. Explosion, as you know, is explosion. It is mine explosion, bomb explosion. Vivimarie had witnessed 1996, yes, bomb blast in Central Bank. LTTE targeted Central Bank and bombed it. A truck full of explosives broke through the gate and a suicide bomber blasted it. More than 100 died on the spot and many others in hospital and thousands were injured. Many lifetime victims. LTT did so many violent things, inhuman things. Right? One of the most terrible activities of LTTE was killing innocent civilians. Several times they exploded many places: Colombo Peta railway station, the Hivula railway station, Inland Revenue Department, and Lake House, and Central Bank, and many other places they exploded bombs. And Kotnaik Airport, and Galle Harbour, right. There was a 30-year extended war in Sri Lanka between Sri Lankan forces and LTT. It was exterminated from Sri Lanka in 2009 under the military head General Sanath and political head Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa. Right? It was President Rajapaksa's rule. The war was annihilated from this country. Its consequences are still remaining. Now, at that time, LTT was labelled one of the most terrible terrorist organizations in Sri Lanka. One reason, they murdered innocent civilians. Right? If there was a war, that should be between army and their terrorist groups and other three forces. But innocent civilians who came to their offices in the morning, right, went home as dead bodies. That is inhuman. Vivimarie questions why did LTT fall into such horrible activities. In January 31st, 1996, that tragedy occurred in Colombo. This was not the first attack in Colombo. Okay. Now let's discuss the poem. On the day, the truckload of explosives drove into the Central Bank. She explains that truck load of explosives drove into the Central Bank. Her voice is cynical and critical towards military forces and defense authority. The reason, when there was a terrible war and Colombo was a high defensive area, right, especially Central Bank area, There were road barriers everywhere. Thorough army guard. Despite such a thing, how did the truck enter? That means there is a loophole somewhere, shortcoming. STF, SF, commandos were deployed in Colombo city in order to safeguard. Drove into central bank for a lone second time staggered. All sounds of workday morning in the city. That happened workday morning in the city, right? Even the coin of the cross merged into a solitary boom, prism of fire and fury. Their sounds also boomed. Everything became silent after this explosion. That time in Colombo, especially in Colombo, people are always curious. Even on buses, they were doubtful of another bag. Railway stations, always army, police, STF checked passenger bags and luggages, even motor cars. But how did this happen? A truck full of explosives, Lives ended, eyes were blinded, some died. Many people became blind. Central bank, many girls, boys, men, women working in central bank died, and for the lifetime they became blind. Eyes were blinded. Retired wage earners collecting provident funds were crushed under brick and glass. Actually, if they attacked the army headquarters, it's okay. You remember that General Fonseca was bombed in army headquarters. That is military action. But if they attacked police headquarters, that would be accepted. But here, central bank. Other thing, retired people were gathering in central bank to take their provident fund, were crushed under brick and glass because buildings fell. They were crushed under debris. Job lot. The nearby vegetable sellers' hands were severed. Nearby there was a vegetable seller on the road, pavement seller. So his hands were also injured, like cucumbers. In a simile, the poet says it's like cucumbers. Women in sari held the eyeballs in their palms. Women were wearing sari were going to offices, their working places, in other works. The eyeballs fell into their palms. So what a cruelty. And blood splattered the streets, erasing memory. Out of the broken window of a damaged car, dead driver. A car is damaged, windows broken, but radio channel is on, There's a commercial advertisement. On a commercial break, a man's pleasant voice announced that big or small insurance, protect them all. That is insurance advertisement. You can imagine, big or small, loku body samata rakawarne. Then you know which sometimes maybe selling co-union assurance like that, insurance advertisement. Protect them all. That is satirical, At the moment of this tragedy happening, driver died, car radio is still functioning and it is giving insurance. That is ironical thing, juxtaposing two things at the same time. Then now you understand what the poet wants to say. Vivimarie argues why LTTE decided to kill innocent civilians. Actually, LTTE should have vendetta with government and three forces. But they targeted innocent civilians. So that is an inhuman event. That is why they are called terrorists. That was why the Sri Lankan government decided to annihilate them. They must have been annihilated because they are terrorists, So this is satirical towards the humankind because it's a man-made war. And also high defensive Colombo city. How did such a thing happen? This is not the only tragedy. Only horrible attack. Before that, there were so many. Even Major Mutalif, he was head of army intelligence unit, was killed, bombed there. And previously President Premadasa was bombed in Armour Street. Ranjan Vijayarathne, one of the former defense ministers, was bombed. Lakshman Kadiragamer was also shot, right? Like that, so many terrible events were recorded in Colombo. General public have no connection with war, right? Therefore, LTT being a terrorist movement, killing innocent people can't be accepted. Vivimarie questions that. These innocent people, vegetable seller, he doesn't have any connection with war. Our central bank employees, they didn't have any connection. Those who came to central bank to get their provident fund, they didn't have any connection, right? So that the poet criticizes LTT as well as the Sri Lankan forces for not protecting people. That means there had been some dent, some defect on the side of security authorities. Otherwise, how can such a thing happen in Colombo? Right? On the side of the government also there is a failure according to the poem. Because there were several attempts to peacemaking in Sri Lanka. Right? War should be finished through war. That's how President Mahinda Rajapaksa, General Sanath Fonseca together worked to finish this. Also, Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa that time was Defense Secretary in Sri Lanka. That union supported the extermination of LTT from Sri Lanka. And when you answer, right, when you write answer, you have to look at the poem through a critical eye towards LTT. Right? Why did they kill innocent civilians? They also wanted to destroy the hubs of economy. Economical hub is central bank. Right? But however, like Phoenix birds, Sri Lanka could, right, emerge through the ashes of war. War brought Sri Lanka many decades back. Right? All people, Tamilo, Muslingo, Burger, Sinhalese, same, humans. So the poet questioned, why do humans take in weapons on humans? Other thing, LTT was that far inhuman to explode bombs in public areas, peopling areas. So now you know that the poet also criticizes security forces for not protecting the Colombo city, central bank. How did that truck enter here? Didn't soldiers there see it? Why didn't they stop it? Other thing is that suicide bombers, right? There is a novel, Sri Lankan novel called Tigers Don't Confess. In that novel, there is a girl called Shalini. Shalini becomes a suicide bomber, right? She removes her breasts in a surgery to replace the breast with explosive kit to go to public place and explode. So LTT could brainwash their people to become, right, whom? Suicide bombers. So that far cruel this LTT. The poet describes that cruelty of LTT, inhumanity, and their horrible actions, especially, right, taking their people, brainwashing their people to be the suicide bombers. suicide bomber came with that truck, exploded that. Right. That far they disseminated the hatred of race, racial hatred. Right. In order to wake up, get up as one country, first of all, we have to get rid of these racial vendetta, differences. Right. This should be done through education from the beginning. We are not late for that. Yes. So in future I will guide you how to write answers. Today enough. Goodbye.